In one of the world's largest tropical wetlands, life is driven by seasonal extremes. At the peak of the dry season, romance is in the air. Here, even humans are forced to follow the rhythms of the Pantanal's seasons. The Pantanal is home to over 650 species of birds. A brilliant kaleidoscope that comes in every color, shape, and size. They thrive in this immense wetland. More than 10 times larger than the Everglades, the Pantanal lies in the heart of South America. 80% is covered in water in the rainy season. Now at the peak of the dry season, when fish and other aquatic animals are trapped in the shallow pools and shrinking marshes, thousands of birds congregate in this natural paradise to breed and raise their young. The royalty of the Pantanal are the jabiru. The glorious wings of these magnificent storks span up to 10 feet. This female jabiru is expecting her mate to return to the nest. She's watching over 3 chicks who are impatiently waiting to be fed. The adults look alike, but the male is usually about 25% larger than the female. The chicks are about a month old, so now they are often left alone. So day after day, they sit exposed to the unrelenting sun. And in the middle of the dry season, they're always begging for water. It'll be another 2 months before the chicks learn to fly. About 6 more months before they're completely independent. And they're keeping their parents busy. It's time for the main course. Father jabiru regurgitates the dinner. Eels. One of the jabiru's favorite foods. Enough for the whole family. The jabirus are raising their young on a tight schedule. The rains will start in less than 2 months. Flying and fishing skills take time to learn. The adults hold their beaks at 45 degrees just the right angle to skim the water's surface. When they sense their prey, they quickly close their bill. When they're 3.5 months old, the chicks will leave the safety of the nest and have to hunt for themselves. With their parents' help, the chicks will master both fishing and flying before the heavy rains of the monsoon season turn the savanna back into a vast wetland. But for now, these lowlands are a hotbed of activity for the diverse bird population of the Pantanal. Even at its driest, this area still has ponds and marshes and a river flowing through it. And that's why the very rare hyacinth macaws have picked this spot to breed. Over 3 feet long from the top of its head to the tip of its tail, the hyacinth macaw is the largest of all the parrots. But it's not too large to squeeze through a narrow opening into a safe and cozy home. Over 90% of hyacinth macaw nests are found inside the hollows of manduvi trees. The soft wood of the tree's trunk allows the macaws to dig out a roomy shelter. Macaws lay a clutch of 2 or 3 eggs once a year. When the eggs hatch, the competition for food will be so fierce, only one hatchling is likely to survive. While the female incubates the eggs, the male is in charge of bringing her food and water. A small pond is just a few steps away. Although they do drink water, they get most of the moisture they need from the food they eat. One of the hyacinth macaw's favorite foods is the akuri palm fruit. Inside is a tasty nut, but it's got a hard shell that's tough to crack. Macaws have an easier way to get at it. Cattle are also fond of the akuri fruits. Once they swallow the fruits, their multi-chambered stomach does the rest, breaking down the hard inner shell that contains the nut. Finding the nuts is a simple scavenger hunt for the macaws. The best breeding spot for the birds of the Pantanal happens to be on a 25,000-acre cattle ranch. The Nellore is a hardy, heat-tolerant breed similar to the Brahman and the Zebu, and was imported from India about 200 years ago. They've been grazing on the native grasses of the Pantanal ever since. While the dry season is a time for the birds to stay put and focus on breeding, it's a time for the cattle to move. Just like the birds and other local wildlife, the cattle and the ranchers have learned to adapt to the drastic seasonal changes of the region. The cattle have eaten most of the grass in their pasture, and they need to move before the rainy season brings the floods. The cowboys drive the herd to a fresh pasture on higher ground. It'll take 10 cowboys 3 days to move the 1,000 head of cattle across 25 miles of wetland and savanna. Just a few weeks, with the return of the rains, much of this land will be underwater. Then fish, rather than cattle, will travel over the grasslands. Most of the birds will leave as the fish disperse over a wide area and become hard to find. Here in bird paradise, there are no deep and dark forests. Only small clusters of tropical trees growing out of the water. This is a tree island. It began its life as a small watery patch of dense vegetation, and over time grew bigger and bigger, until a few trees took root and eventually formed an island. Now it is a lush sanctuary for several species of birds. This island is home to the noisiest birds in the Pantanal. The Chaco Chachalaca. Some call them samba birds, after their sing-song calls. The cattle ranchers call them the alarm clocks of the Pantanal. They start at dawn and don't stop screeching until sundown. The squawking stops just long enough for the Chaco Chachalaca to take a bite of a juicy fig. Their bad reputation isn't just for making a racket. It also includes a more serious crime. They're guilty of killing palm trees. After the Chaco Chachalaca has digested the figs, some of the seeds carried in its feces fall onto the upper branches of a palm tree, where there's a lot more sunlight than in the dark forest below. When the seeds germinate, they don't only grow up, they also grow down. The vines that sprout from the fig seeds wrap around the trunk of the palm, spiral down to the forest floor, and take root in the moist, fertile soil. Over the years, the vines thicken and strengthen, wrapping the palm in a parasitic stranglehold and never let go. It can take decades, even a century, for a strangler fig to kill a mature palm tree. This Akuri palm fell victim to a strangler vine many years ago. Its days are numbered, but it's still producing akuri fruits, the much-loved food of the hyacinth macaw. While some macaws scavenge cattle dung for partially digested akuri fruits, others collect them directly from the bunches hanging on the trees. But it's a lot more work. Their sharp beaks and powerful jaw muscles open the tough fruits and crack the inner shells. Their unusual tongue, reinforced with a hook-shaped bone, scoops out the nut. If a tough or slippery fruit won't open, the clever macaw has a tool for that. Sometimes they'll use a green leaf to act as a wedge to keep the fruit from moving. And if that doesn't work, it's back to the toolbox for another tool. This time, it's a sliver of wood that stops it from slipping. Success. This pair of macaws is also responding to the call of the breeding season. They have a nest nearby, but have yet to produce any eggs. They're in no rush. Courtship seems just as much fun. Hyacinth macaws mate for life. Their courtship rituals, preening and feeding each other, help these birds reinforce their bond. Back at the marsh, another loyal couple is hard at work. Alone in the nest, the jabiru chicks are thirsty and hungry. But when the father jabiru comes home with a beak full of sticks and twigs, the chicks are disappointed. There's no water or tasty eels in his pouch on this trip. All the coming and going takes its toll on the nest, so repairs are necessary. The nest is critical to the chick's survival. The mother jabiru takes care of the construction using materials provided by the father. Because of their size, adult jabirus can defend themselves, but their chicks are vulnerable. The nest protects them from the most dangerous predators below, but they're still exposed to predators coming from above. Like this crested caracara, the key scavenger of the Pantanal. Caracara won't tangle with an adult jabiru. It prefers easier targets, like the chicks. The cautious mother takes no chances and shelters her young under her wings. This jabiru family have built their nest on some prime real estate at the top of a tall tree. The few bare branches are strong enough to support the family and their home. And there's plenty of room for their big wings. In other regions of the Pantanal, perches like this are few and far between. But here, there's enough to accommodate many jabiru families. In a nest nearby, 4 juveniles about 12 weeks old look like they're ready to begin flying lessons. The parents leave them alone for longer and longer periods. With their large, sharp beaks, they're old enough to defend themselves, or at least signal danger by clacking their beaks loudly in alarm. Their parents have worked on their nest for quite a while. It's become so big, several families of monk parakeets have moved into the basement apartment. They are year-round tenants. When the rainy season comes, the monk parakeets stay put, while the jabiru adults and their young rejoin their flocks and spread out across the lowlands of the Pantanal. The cattle also need to move to greener pastures above the reach of the floods when the monsoon rains come. The cowboys move along at the herd's natural pace. They don't want the beef cattle to burn too many calories and lose weight. Cattle have panoramic vision, which means they can see everything around them, except what's directly behind them. So the cowboys and their dogs drive them from the rear. And nudge the strays back into the herd. The pastures they've left behind are depleted. The ranchers set fire to the dry fields to prepare for the fast-approaching rainy season and stimulate new growth for the next season. Burning the pastures is a 2-centuries-old tradition. And for the predators and scavengers, the flames bring new opportunity. A savanna hawk scans the smoky landscape for prey. Small animals trying to escape the heat and flames risk running straight into an ambush. If the hawk doesn't strike from the air, its cousin, the caracara, will intercept on the ground. The caracara is a falcon. Unlike most falcons, however, the caracara is not a fast-flying predator. It's an opportunist, hunting and scavenging in a variety of ways. Because it's small and light, it patrols the grasslands by flying much lower than other scavengers. On the ground, it searches for small prey and carrion. This caracara is lucky. It found this carcass before the vultures. Once they land, they're quick to take over. Back at the nesting site, another jabiru family is raising its young. Jabirus don't build their nests in large colonies, but you'll often find a few nests in close proximity because of the trees they choose. This female still keeps a close eye on her two chicks, although they're almost ready to fledge. Even once they can fly, it'll be many more weeks before these teenagers are truly independent. The parents are busy working overtime, making more and more trips to the ponds and marshes to keep them supplied with food. The shallow water in this pond makes it a popular spot to fish. The jabiru stork has an advantage over the other birds that gather here. A giant inflatable pouch for carrying food and water. The water is shallow, but it's murky. Catching a fish you can't see takes a lot of patience and skill. The jabiru have plenty of both. With their long legs, they wait along the edges. The tip of their beak is sensitive, and they find their prey by feel. They know there's plenty of tasty little fish and other animals hiding in the mud. With water levels so low at this time of year, the fish have to come to the surface for oxygen. Some prey, like this giant snail, are too much work. Others take a little more work, but are worth the effort. It takes a little while, but the adults eventually manage to fill up their pouches. They scoop up water and food in one gulp. And carry the whole load back to their nests. At the nest, the fledglings patiently wait for the male to return with the goods, while the female stands guard. And when a caracara flies too close, the mother acts as a decoy and tries to lure it away from her chicks. Scavengers rarely prey on large birds like the storks, especially not the jabiru, but this mother is taking no chances. The black-collared hawk is another bird of prey that calls the Pantanal home. From his perch, he scans the river for any signs of fish. His sharp talons are perfect for grabbing and holding on to its prey. But fishing takes a lot of skill. Or a little luck. If at first you don't succeed, try again. His perseverance is rewarded with some easy pickings, fish that probably died from a lack of oxygen. During hard times, the black-collared hawk might feed on water bugs or rodents, but there's no need today. Although the abundance of fish in this area make it a perfect breeding place for birds, not all birds come here to fish, and not all birds will leave at the end of the breeding season. The red ovenbird is a year-round resident that eats insects. He's also an expert architect. He collects mud and straw to build his nest. This nest is now home to 3 chicks. Its oven-like shape keeps the heat in. It acts like an incubator and allows the parent to have more time to forage. Lunch is whatever insect comes by. This one goes down the hatch. This one she brings home. She quarrels with unwelcome visitors. This is private property, and the red ovenbird is particular about territory. Now it's back to hunting. This non-stop pickup and delivery service will go on for about 3 weeks. After that, the fledglings will be expected to do their own shopping. For now, they're at the mercy of their hard-working parents. This yellow-headed caracara, a cousin of the southern crested caracara, can't believe its good fortune. 3 small hatchlings with no parental supervision. They would make an easy meal compared to the ticks that are usually on its menu. The mother spots the intruder from afar and screeches. It was a close call, and there'll probably be many more this season. Even in the dry season, there are still a few places where trees are in bloom and fruits are ripe for the picking. The streams and rivers teem with fish, and the banks are flush with aquatic plants and insects. And hundreds of thousands of birds. It's a glorious banquet table set for one of the world's most ancient predators, the caiman. The smaller cousin of the alligator and the crocodile. By some estimates, over 10 million caimans live and hunt in the wetlands of the Pantanal, the largest caiman population on the planet. Birds and crocodiles are distant cousins. Caimans evolved from the same group that gave rise to dinosaurs and birds. Caimans are nocturnal, and during the day, these reptiles mostly just bask in the sun. Those are impressive-looking teeth, but caimans hunt in water, not on land. Their open mouths help them regulate their body temperature. The caiman has spotted a white egret hunting for fish. The egret scans the water. It's so focused on catching its own lunch, it hasn't noticed the stealthy caiman. A splash spooks the egret just in time. Back on land, the cowboys and their cattle are approaching the end of their long journey. The grass is getting better with every step towards the high pasture. But the good food comes too late for some. One animal fell sick and died and was left behind. To the delight of this flock of vultures. Unlike most vultures, black vultures don't have a great sense of smell, so one of them must have spotted it from the air. The good news is they've got it all to themselves. The bad news is there are no caracara here to slice open the cow's thick hide. Vultures depend on the smaller caracara's formidable talons and beaks to do the carving for them. Although the vultures look tough, their feet are weaker than other raptors, and their beaks are not as curved, so they start with the soft parts. Vultures rely on one another to find dead animals, and wherever there is one, there are soon many squabbling over the banquet. There is a hierarchy at dinner time. The younger ones are always the last to dine. Although a dominant bird sometimes has to reassert its position. Back at the jabiru's nest, there's trouble in bird paradise. The steely-eyed caracara looks like it's just taking a stroll, but it's hard at work, foraging. High above, there are only 2 chicks in the jabiru nest. But there should be 3. This jabiru chick probably fell out of the nest. This is the harsh reality all jabiru parents live with every breeding season. They lay between 3 and 5 eggs, but even the hardest working, most protective and diligent parents often lose 1 or 2 chicks. "28 miles away, the herd with 1 less cow finally reaches the new pasture. There's enough fresh grass to feed the entire herd until the end of the wet season. It's getting late. The sun's low on the horizon, and it's time for the cook to earn his pay. While the herd settles down for the night, the cowboys gather around the fire for dinner. At home or in the field, the cowboys follow the rhythms of the Pantanal, up at dawn and to bed at sunset. It's a traditional way of life, like this dinner of arroz carretero, or wagon rider's rice. A mixture of rice, beef, peppers, and onions, shared with a visitor.
Joga bem no teu pé aí, por favor. Isso.
Deixa eu contar boi cedo.
When night begins to fall, they sling their hammocks, rig the mosquito nets, and wash the pots and pans, ready for the next day. Down in the lowlands, a large flock of black ibis returns to its dormitory and settles in for the night. In a few more weeks, the winds will bring dark clouds heavy with rain to empty their load over the southwestern tip of the Pantanal. The breeding season will be over until next year, when the water recedes and nature signals that it is time to start again in bird paradise.